Good morning, welcome to Headline Focus here live on Core Politics with me, Rob Double. It is Friday the 9th of March 2018 and let's have a look at what's making the political news today. So to start off with, Westminster Culture of Fear. Now this is off the back of a BBC Newsnight investigation which went out yesterday night. Key thing into bullying in Parliament, in Westminster, the Houses of Parliament, and the House of Commons Speaker John Bercow was named, as well as two backbench MPs, Labour MP Mark Farrelly and Tory MP Mark Pritchard. They deny allegations made by current and former parliamentary staff that they acted in a bullying way towards junior Commons officials. Now, I stress that they deny these accusations, which came out last night as a result of this BBC Newsnight investigation, and so there'll be more lines on this, obviously, as Westminster wakes up today as well. The report from the BBC also warned of a culture of fear across Parliament, particularly in terms of bullying and the treatment of junior staffers and clerks and stuff like that in comparison to MPs who are their managers and their bosses. Possibly more to come. There are obviously commentary coming through today, this morning as well, that this is not just a isolated issue. There are more instances and there's more examples which could be coming out in the next few days and indeed the next few weeks, but something to keep your eyes on today. Next up, let's look over across the pond at what President Trump is doing. Now, last night, he signed the executive order which will impose tariffs on metals imported to the US and possibly trigger a global trade war. At least that's what a lot of the UK press are covering and how the press are covering this story itself. The 25% tariff on steel and the 15% tariff on aluminium, Trump said, was not a matter of choice, but a matter of necessity for our security. Now, that it will come into effect in 15 days' time, so about 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks. Now, in terms of exemptions, this is a really important thing that has come out really in the last few hours. The whole idea of exemptions is something that President Trump seems to be open to. Now, whether or not it will happen, we'll just have to wait and see. But in terms of what the criteria could be for whether a country is exempt or not, something which is reported as coming out is that President Trump is keen to link the exemptions with countries which meet or rather fail to deliver their defence commitments specifically towards the NATO budget. Now, you remember, particularly in the campaign trail and whilst Donald Trump has been president, the idea of NATO spending in countries needing to fulfil the collective responsibility in terms of funding NATO, not just leaving it to the US, has been a key talking point for him and something he's been very, very keen to address. This, of course, could be a very, very, very significant opportunity to achieve that, or at least put political pressure on governments to achieve their NATO spending. The UK, of course, delivers its 2% spending into defence and indeed delivers its commitments into NATO as well. So that's potentially a good route for the UK in terms of getting the exemption. Liam Fox last night said he will visit Washington to explain to the White House that the UK produces very high value and quality steel, and also that it produces steel some of which can't be sourced in the US itself, so the US has to import it. And so all you're going to do is, if you push up tariffs with the UK, all you're going to do is increase the price of steel in the US for your consumers and your customers. Now, interestingly, what the EU Trade Commissioner Cecilia Malmström tweeted out last night, now the EU has obviously, in the immediate reaction, has said, yes, well, we will, if they put tariffs on steel and aluminium, we'll put tariffs on these products which come from the US, and this will start, a trade war of some sorts. We don't want this. Now, interesting, Cecilia Malmström, the Trade Commissioner, said the EU is a close ally of the US, and we continue to be of the view that the EU should be excluded from these measures. So a lot more, a slightly different tone there, more the EU saying, look, we shouldn't be involved in these measures if you want to go through with them. A lot less than the confrontational, well, if you do that, we do this, bring it on, which has come through in some of the newspapers in the past few days. We'll be in Europe next week asking these very questions, so make sure to check us out Monday and Tuesday. And finally, no tax on coffee cups. Now, ministers have rejected the idea of a 25% surcharge on disposable coffee cups. Now, Labour MP Mary Cray, who chairs the Environment Audit Committee, said the recommendation was aimed basically at reducing waste created by cups. 500,000 are thrown away every day in the UK, with only 1 in 400 actually recycled. I'll just give you a sense of scale there. She said that our report recommended practical solutions to disposable packaging crisis and has actually accused the government of warm words but no real action. The government, of course, wants voluntary action by coffee shops in terms of clamping down on the disposable coffee cups. But perhaps for Michael Gove, who's been championing these environmental causes over the past few months as Environment Secretary, this is not perhaps the success and the easy ride that he was hoping for in terms of another policy success. That's pretty much it for today, and indeed this week. You're up to date. Don't forget you can find all the latest on what we're doing here on Core Politics on our Facebook page and Twitter right here. We'll be in Europe on Monday and Tuesday next week, bringing you headline focus from there, and indeed much of the European coverage to do with Brexit and indeed the Trump-EU possible trade war. But from me and all the team here at Core London, have a fantastic start to your weekend.